Guruji, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
I'm really not very qualified, Guruji, to address this very sincere group of devotees, especially under your leadership. But it is my sincere desire to please all of you and serve all of you in some way. So I seek all of your blessings. I can speak in Parampara and speak in a way which is very pleasing to Sri Hari, Guru, and all the Vaishnavas. Begin with Mangalacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiti. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Dev Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinam Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurami Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Pranamami Hari Hari Vancha Kalpa Tarubhishya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. Hare Krishna. Just a minute. I'll just share my presentation. Brish, you're able to see my presentation?
Yes, Prabhu. Clear.
So, I was asked to speak on this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter 15, entitled Pandavas Retire Timely. So, in the given time, we'll try to summarize and also discuss some important lessons that Srila Prabhupada has mentioned in his purports. This is a very, very interesting chapter, especially the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with so many wonderful lessons and such interesting stories. Srila Prabhupada said that I have given everything required for going back home, back to God in the first canto. on his purport that he had written while sitting in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And the connecting link for this chapter is in the previous chapter, which is entitled The Disappearance of Lord Krishna. So, Dishit Maharaj has asked a series of questions to Arjuna for identifying the cause of his grief. And in this chapter, Arjuna begins to speak. And by the end of chapter, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Pandavas, Draupadi, Subhadra, all of them, they actually take retirement. They go to the north and they try to perfect their lives. So that's why the chapter is entitled as Pandavas Retiring Timely. Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Los Angeles in 1973, he gave a series of lectures on this chapter. I guess around 30 or more than 30 lectures Srila Prabhupada has given just on this one chapter. So this chapter contains total 51 verses, out of which 30 verses Srila Prabhupada has spoken on. I could not get time to go through all of them, but whatever vital lessons I could gather, I'd like to share today. So, summary of all the topics which are there in this chapter. Initial 4 verses, Arjuna is expressing his strong feelings of separation from Krishna. After that, Arjuna recalls his experiences which he spent with Krishna and how Krishna favored him and protected him in many different situations in his life. After that, Arjuna feels null and void in Krishna's absence. Then Arjuna focuses on Krishna's instructions and attains transcendence. After this, Maharaj Yudhishthira plans for retirement. And saying that Yudhishthira Maharaj is retiring, the other Pandavas and Draupadi also follow him. So this is the summary of all the contents of this chapter. So we'll begin with the first section, which discusses about the strong feelings of separation that Arjuna felt from Krishna. So the first 4 verses, it is described that Arjuna was grief-stricken. His mouth had dried up, heart was also dried up. He could hardly speak. So this is very similar to his situation just before the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So very similar situation he experienced here. But here it was because of the loss of Krishna that he was experiencing in his own life. And then checking his tears, although he was very overwhelmed, he begins to speak, to answer the questions that Yudhishthira Maharaj has asked in the previous chapter. The 5th verse is discussing a little different theme, but on 6th verse, Arjuna again comes back to this theme of experiencing separation from Krishna, where he expresses that I have just lost him, which has rendered all the universes null and void for me. A very famous and beautiful verse Arjuna speaks. Yasya kshana viyogena loko hi apriya darshana uktena rahito hi esha mritakah prochate yatha. He says, Yasya kshana viyogena. Just by a moment of separation from Krishna, loko hi apriya darshana. The whole universe has become apriya, unpalatable or void for me. Uktena rahito hi esha. Just like he says, mritakaha prochate yatha. Just like a body becomes completely useless as soon as the soul has departed, same way, this whole universe is appearing void for me as soon as Krishna has disappeared from this place. So, for Arjuna, Krishna was not just one of the persons in his life, but actually he was essence of everything that he was living for. Not only for Arjuna, but for all the Pandavas. Krishna was essence of everything. And when that essence is gone, he's feeling very grief-stricken, completely helpless, and he's missing him very much now. So we will try to discuss this, in little more detail about this theme of feeling of separation from Krishna. So even in ordinary relationships, we see when we lose someone whom we loved very much, people become so much affected. People get so much affected, and it's almost impossible for them to live. Many times I have seen, sometimes uh, I get to hear news like husband and wife, they're very, very attached to each other. And this happened during the COVID time, that the wife, she passed away because of COVID, and husband could not sustain more than 15 days. He was feeling so much separation from her that he also died. Or it happens other way also. Sometimes husband passes away and wife is so attached to him that she also cannot maintain her life. So even in ordinary material relationships, we see people get so much affected. Then what to say of separation that someone will feel in connection to Krishna? Because it is Krishna who is actually the source of real joy, or the real happiness actually is coming from Krishna. As George Harrison also said, that everyone is looking for Krishna. Some know it, some do not know it. Um, in Brahma Vimohan Lila, and this is very nicely depicted. Before Brahmaji had stolen cows and calves, and sorry, the cowherd boys from Krishna, the Vrajvasis were actually loving their children, the cowherd boys and calves. But after Brahmaji stole them, Krishna expanded himself as the cowherd boys and the calves. And all the Vrajvasis and even the cows experienced that their love has increased unlimited times. Although they were in the same form which they had seen them earlier. Now they're in the same form. But because they are Krishna's expansion, their love increased millions of times more. So when that Krishna has disappeared, Arjuna is feeling great separation. And in his lecture on this initial verses, Srila Prabhupada says that we are also suffering in our life because we are also separated from Krishna. And real happiness we will be able to attain only when we come closer to Krishna. To the degree you come closer to Krishna, to that degree you will experience real happiness and satisfaction. To the degree we go away from Him, to that degree we will not be happy, satisfied. And in absence of Krishna in our life, we will try to do so many permutation combinations of matter to make ourselves satisfied. I was discussing this with some of the devotees few days back. Why do human beings try so much permutation and combination in eating, sleeping, mating, defending? Whereas we see animals, they are very happy and satisfied with very basic and simple life. Like in my home, we had a dog, and practically whole life, dog was given only some milk and chapatis. All whatever 2 times or 3 times he would eat, his only diet was simple milk and chapatis, and whole life he was happily eating that. But imagine if you serve the same food to a human being, it becomes very difficult. Even if you are fed your most favorite dish 3 times a day for 7 days, a stage will come when you will feel disgusted. People sometimes even vomit when they see the same item again and again on their plate. So human beings, we cannot generally remain very happy, satisfied with something simple. Animals, we see monkeys, they are eating the same fruit on the tree. They do not try a lot of combination or making some salad, fruit salad, and adding some spices to that. Human beings, why is it that we always try to increase the happiness in these basic activities of eating or sleeping? Even for sleeping, animals, they have very simple facilities for sleeping, either in their caves or on the street, wherever they find some place where they can just lie down, they peacefully sleep. But human beings, we have been trying so many advancement just to increase our comfort in the sleep. Many years back, almost 15 years back, when I was just getting into college, I had gone to one of my friend's home, and those days he had very costly beds. Mm. Uh, Just one single bed was costing around 2 lakh rupees those days, and I was amazed. What is so special about it? He told it has special magnets and it does some acupuncture action on your body. And later on, I did some survey. I could find that there are beds worth 5 crore rupees, Indian rupees, and there are water beds, jet beds, or magnetic floating beds, because people want to remain away from the shocks of his life. They want to get a feeling of get, feeling of getting elevated. So there are magnetic beds which will float in air, and you can sleep on them. So I got a I had this question always in my life, but after hearing some senior devotees, I got a very convincing answer. Why do we try for so much increase in basic activities of happiness? Is because human form of life is designed to tap that spiritual happiness. Our need for happiness is very high, and in disconnecting from Krishna, we cannot fulfill that high need of happiness by any other replacement. So, because people are not connecting to Krishna, they are staying away from their spiritual life. That arises the need of increasing happiness on basic activities of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And so many permutation combinations people have been trying. But no matter what permutation combination you do, people are trying to increase the intensity of tastes, of mating, of sleeping and defending, but that will not satisfy unless you connect to Krishna. That's what Prabhupada is mentioning in his lecture on these first 4 verses, that we are also suffering in our life because we have disconnected ourselves from Krishna. And in the purports of these first 4 verses, Prabhupada mentions uh, very interesting thing. He says, actually, living entity doesn't have any standing without Paramatma. Soul cannot do anything without presence of Paramatma. What to say of soul? Prabhupada says that even Paramatma and Brahman do not have any locus standi without Krishna. This is how vital Krishna's presence is. Without Krishna, even Paramatma and Brahman, they do not have any standing. So when such a Krishna is lost from one's life, how much pain, how much suffering one will undergo. That is what Arjuna is expressing in this series of verses. In another lecture, Srila Prabhupada mentions that how attached we can come to know only when that thing is taken away from us. So, how much we are making progress in Krishna consciousness, we will come to know only when Krishna is separated from our life. If not Krishna, because Krishna is very high thing for us. If we are separated from devotees, how much do we hanker to get back in association of devotees? If we are separated from sadhus, how much do we hanker to get back in association of sadhus? That is one of the barometer of our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Sri Prabhupada mentions that just like a drunkard, he cannot stay without wine. After some time, it becomes very difficult for him to live a life without wine. Where is wine? Where is wine? He's constantly thinking, where and how can I get more and more wine? Prabhupada says, same way, if you have such a feeling of separation from sadhu, you're always thinking, where is that sadhu? Where is that devotee? Where is my spiritual master? How can I get his more and more association? How can I serve him? How much do I want to contact him? Not just in terms of Vapu, but how much do I contact his Vani? To that degree, we can see we are perfecting our life. So one question may arise in our heart, that why does Krishna give such separation to living entities, especially for great devotees like Arjuna? And Acharyas mentioned that for advanced souls, Krishna makes them feel separation just to increase their ecstasy. Acharyas like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they mention that what wind does to fire, is what separation does to love. Imagine if somebody has a very small fire, say a matchstick is lightened up, and if wind comes in, so this even a small wind will blow away this fire which is on the matchstick. But if there is a forest fire, and if wind comes, the forest fire will increase. So for a neophyte person, his love for Krishna is like that fire of matchstick. And when he's separated from Krishna, separation is compared to the wind, his Krishna consciousness is extinguished. His desire to practice Krishna consciousness is gone. But for pure devotees, their fire is like forest fire. Their love for Krishna is like forest fire. And when separation in the form of wind comes, it only increases their ecstasy. It only increases their love. And our Sampradaya, one of the topmost goal that uh, Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas discuss is to cultivate this feeling of separation from Krishna. The Goswamis, they would sing in Vrindavan, Hey Radhe, Vajadevi Ke Chalate, Hey Nanda Shuno Kutta. Oh, where are you, Radharani? Where are you, Krishna? Where are you? Where can I see you? How can I meet you? And that is the very same feeling Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also expressed in his Shikshashtakam. Says, Shunya idam jagat sarvam govinda virahenam. And Arjuna is telling the same thing. Yasya kshana viyogena loko hi apriyadarshana. This is what should actually happen to us. We should be, how much do we feel separation or voidness in our life when we are separated from Krishna or his devotees. And gopis also have been uh, expressing these feelings of separation so strongly, and especially in the Gopi Geet. They're in so much trance, so much feeling of separation from Krishna that they start imitating Krishna's activities like playing flute or lifting Govardhan hill or dancing on Kaliya. They start imitating activities of Krishna. So uh, because of the strong feeling of separation that they have from Krishna. In the third canto, one of the first few chapters, Prabhupada mentions about transcendental perception of viraha, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives very interesting analogy in this case, because we may feel that for devotees like Arjuna, Krishna is always there with him. Why does he feel that separation? Krishna is there everywhere. Why should he feel so much separation? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that separation is like is like being under a sun, and union is like being under a moon. So whenever you are under a sun, you can see everything very clearly. And sometimes because of intense separation, the devotee is able to yeah, experience the other features of Krishna also. It's like, in the sense like Arjuna, he comes in Dasya Bhav, or the gopis are also discussing in the Gopi Geet that, oh Krishna, where are you? You are like Paramatma in everyone's heart. In union, it's like moonlight, only whatever is required that will be seen. They cannot see Krishna as Paramatma, they cannot see Krishna as the supreme controller, all pervading, pervasive, absolute truth. They just see him as a person whom they love. But when separation is there, sometimes the devotees express this kind of feelings. Where in the later verses also we will see Arjuna is going to express that, oh, alas, why did I chastise Krishna sometimes? I did not take him seriously. How could I engage him in serving me as my chariot driver? So these kind of feelings arise actually because of the great separation that devotees experience in his life. And the fifth verse is Vanchitoham Maharaja Harina Bandhu Rupena Yena me apiritam tejo deva vismapanam hat. Arjuna is telling that, oh Yudhishthir, I have been left alone by Krishna. And as soon as Krishna has gone away from my life, all the powers I had, they are also taken away. So sometimes we see Krishna, he empowers or empowered person is disempowered. Uh, Very nice purport Srila Prabhupada gives discussing various aspects. Arjuna expresses that my intimate friend has left me alone, and my power is no more with me. And his purport, Prabhupada writes very interesting statement. He says, the lesson is, therefore, that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. The sane man should rather feel obliged to the Lord for such benefactions and must utilize such power for the service of the Lord. Such power can be withdrawn at any time by the Lord. So, the best use of such power and opulence is to engage them in the service of the Lord. So Krishna wants, he can empower anyone. He can even empower personalities more than himself. Like Hanumanji was empowered by Lord Ram. Lord Ram had to cross the ocean by having a bridge, but Hanumanji could just jump. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu empowered Haridas Thakur for chanting of the holy names. Although he has come to establish the Yoga Dharma of chanting of the holy names, but Haridas Thakur was empowered to chant in such a way that he became the Namacharya. And we see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Krishna himself has empowered Srila Prabhupada so much. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not go all over the world and preach, but by his empowerment, Srila Prabhupada could go all over the world and preach. So for Krishna, if he wants, he can empower anyone to the extent that the devotee will be able to do greater things than himself. So we see many personalities are empowered for different things. Like Prithu Maharaj is empowered for maintenance. He is known as Palan Shakti of the Lord. Or Parshuram was empowered for destruction. Four Kumaras were empowered by knowledge. Vyasadeva was empowered for writing. And Queen Kunti, she is called as success potency of the Lord. And we see Prabhupada is also empowered with this Nityananda Avesh. He is empowered with so much compassion. So time and again we see many devotees who are empowered. But when we are able to do something very wonderful, we need to be very careful. We need to be aware because that empowerment can bring pride. And that's why Prabhupada is writing, the lesson is therefore that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. It's very important for us to understand that these powers have come in my life by Krishna's mercy. It's because of Krishna's grace that I am able to do something in my life. And if one doesn't meditate on this, if one gets carried away and becomes puffed up, then he cannot call out Krishna's holy name with feelings. As Queen Kunti also tells, Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shrivir Edamama Manakuma. Whenever somebody has got this opulences or empowerment of high birth, knowledge, beauty, opulences, they cannot call out Krishna's holy names with feelings. But if someone is akinchana, that person can actually call out Krishna's name with feelings. Obviously, it's akinchanatva is a matter of heart, not just about the external positions that we carry in our life. But the point is very vital. And Prabhupada is studying in one of the future purports in this chapter also Prabhupada says, do not be proud of the borrowed plumes. Because if you become proud, Prabhupada mentions this story of Punar Mushtika Bhava, very famous story. In this very chapter itself, in one of the classes, he says there was a mouse. He was very much troubled because of the cat. So he goes to a sage and requests that, oh sage, I am very much troubled. Please make me cat. And Sadhu says, Tathastu. So right becomes cat. After some time, the cat again comes, says that I am now troubled by dogs. Please make me dog. Sadhu says, Tathastu. So she becomes dog. After becoming dog, she says, no, I'm chased by tigers. So make me tiger. Sadhu says, Tathastu. So dog becomes tiger. And after becoming tiger, the tiger starts staring at the sage with a desire to eat the sage. And the sage says, what is this? By my power, empowerment, you have come up to the stage of being a tiger. If you are puffed up, if you are wanting to eat me only, Pudan Mushtika Bhava. And he again becomes a mouse. So that is what will happen in our life if we do not, if we are not very careful with the empowerment that we have received in our life, we can get disempowered. Obviously, Arjuna's disempowerment here is not for this reason. Arjuna never became proud in his life. Why do uh, devotees get disempowered? Why does Krishna disempower devotees sometimes? That's a very interesting uh, thing to understand. Krishna disempowers his devotees to give us a lesson, to make us understand that this skills empowerment is not necessary for going back to God. This empowerment was given by Krishna to devotees to perform a particular service, to perform a particular task. And as soon as the task is done, Krishna takes away those powers because those powers are not necessary for going back to God. So sometimes some people get very much stressed. They get very much affected that though I don't have special skills, I don't have special talents, I don't have so much empowerment in my life. No issues, no worry. If you have it, use it in Krishna's service, as Prabhupada says in this purport. If you don't have, don't get stressed. Mm. Just work upon developing your devotion, because ultimately it is devotion that is going to take us back to God, not this material skills. And many personalities we see in history who got puffed up because of the empowerment. One of the case is Indra, because he was so much being respected, so much worshipped, he became puffed up and disrespected his own spiritual master. Prabhupada says another statement in this purport. He says that if endowment of powers and withdrawal of powers by the Lord are possible even for great devotees like Arjuna, or even the demigods in heaven, then what to speak of ordinary living beings who are but pigs compared to great souls? So any time one may get disempowered. So if one is not focused on cultivating devotion, then at the time of disempowerment, one will face a crisis. But to the degree one has developed his devotion, one has developed the right mood in devotional service, to that degree he will not get affected whether he is empowered or suddenly disempowered in his life. So non-devotees, they are disempowered in their life to save those non-devotees and also to save the world from them. So Arjuna is not crying here because he lost his powers. Arjuna is crying because he lost Krishna. And that is the right reason to cry for in our life. And the next section, that is verse 7 to 17, Arjuna recalls his experiences with Krishna. Because whenever we remember someone, it's very natural that we also remember all the times we spent with that person. And Arjuna remembers many favors that Krishna did. First was wedding of Draupadi. Then Arjuna is telling how I could defeat Indra, I could get Agni's help in destroying the Khandava forest. And I also got help of Mayadana. In the later verses, Arjuna says that I also could defeat and astonish Lord Shiva and his wife, and I could get weapons from them. So this Mayadana story is very important. Sri Prabhupada brings out a very important lesson in this verse. So the situation was Khandava forest was given to Pandavas, and Arjuna, he defeats Indra and then takes help of Agni and orders Agni to burn the whole Khandava forest. So when the Khandava forest was being burned, Mayadana was a resident there. He started running around to save his life. And from other side, Krishna also sends his Sudarshan Chakra to kill Mayadana. And seeing dangers from both the side. One side, Agni is attacking, another side, Krishna Sudarshan is coming. Mayadana becomes helpless and he falls at the feet of Arjuna. He comes and takes shelter of Arjuna. And seeing that he has taken shelter of a devotee, Krishna forgives him. And then Mayadana says, Arjuna, what can I do for you? Thank you for saving my life. I want to serve you in some way. Arjuna says, I don't want anything. And then Krishna says that for pleasure of Pandavas, you can make a very nice assembly hall, which became Indraprastha later on, which was very mesmerizing. And all the kings in all the provinces, they got so much amazed by seeing that assembly hall constructed by Maidano that they started paying their tributes to the Pandavas. So Prabhupada brings out two very important lessons. First lesson, he says, devotees are therefore more merciful than the Lord. And in devotional service, the mercy of devotee is more valuable than mercy of the Lord. So we should never neglect devotees' mercy in our life, because their mercy is primary. Their mercy will lead to attracting Krishna's mercy in our life. Vaishnavera Avedana Krishna Dayamaya. Vaishnava songs, they say that only when Vaishnava prays for us will then Krishna bestow his mercy upon us. And another very important lesson Prabhupada brings out in this purport, he says, the process is that by the grace of the devotee, the mercy of Lord is obtained. And by the mercy of the Lord, a chance to serve Lord's devotee is obtained. So by grace of devotee, that is Arjuna, mercy of Lord is obtained. Krishna's mercy came upon Mayadana. And what was Krishna's mercy? He gave opportunity to serve Vaishnavas. So Prabhupada says Vaishnava Kripa will lead to Krishna Kripa. And that Krishna Kripa will give you Vaishnava Seva. So whenever any service opportunity comes, actually it is Krishna's mercy in our life. Whenever we get to serve any Vaishnavas, Vaishnava Seva, that is actually Krishna's mercy. And then that Vaishnava Seva will lead to further Vaishnava Kripa. And then the cycle goes on. Vaishnava Kripa, Krishna Kripa, Vaishnava Seva, again Vaishnava Kripa, Krishna Kripa, Vaishnava Seva. That's how we can go on advancing in the spiritual life. And then Maidano also gifts the famous club to Bhimasen after this incident. And then Arjuna is remembering further instances. He says, Bhima could defeat Jarasandha because of Krishna's mercy. And we could also kill all those people who offended Draupadi. And in this purport also Prabhupada brings another very important lesson. He says, the Lord can tolerate insults upon himself by any miscreant, because the father tolerates even insults from the son. But he never tolerates insults upon his devotees. By insulting a great soul, one has to forego all the results of pious acts and benedictions also. So, just like when we are walking on a hot sandy beach, bare feet, it's easier to tolerate the heat of the sun on our head than on our feet. So Acharya has mentioned that Krishna can tolerate insults upon himself, that is on his head, but he can never tolerate any kind of insult to his devotees who have taken shelter of his feet. It's very difficult to tolerate heat on the feet. So because devotees have taken shelter of the feet of the Lord, we should never offend any devotee. And in case you happen to insult, especially a great soul, all the pious acts and benedictions will be lost from one's life. And then Arjuna mentions that we were also saved from the anger of Durvas Muni. We were also saved from the army of Kauravas, which was very, very impenetrable. There were mighty warriors like Bhishma, Kripa, Drona, but we could overcome all these warriors because of Krishna's mercy. So in this episode of getting saved from the anger of Durvas Muni, we see that Draupadi, she had Akshay Patra with her. But one devotee was mentioning beautifully, he said that Akshay Patra could not help, but Akshay helped. Akshay is another name of Krishna. So we may have some benedictions, we may have some facilities, we may have some Akshay Patra in our life. But ultimately, in time of crisis, what will come to our real help is Akshay, is Krishna himself. And in the previous, the second point I mentioned, astonished Shiva, that verse comes here. He says that I could also astonish Shiva. And there is important lesson there that Arjuna is fighting with one of the greatest demigods, Lord Shiva, and he defeats him, astonishes him, and gets his blessings, gets a weapon from him. So, gaining favor of demigod in your life may or may not guarantee gaining favor of Krishna in your life. It's a, we see case of Ravana. He had gained favor of Lord Shiva, but that did not guarantee gaining favor of Lord Ram in his life, in one sense. But if one is favored by Krishna, then having favored by Krishna, even if one is fighting with a demigod, those demigods will be pleased with you. Because Arjuna had got favor of Krishna, although he was fighting with Lord Shiva was pleased with him. So that's an interesting lesson in this connection. And then Arjuna mentions that we could also kill the Nivad Kavachas, the 60,000 Nivad Kavachas who had attacked the heavens. I could also save the Virat kingdom. And although enemies were shooting so many weapons, so many arrows, but enemies' weapons could not touch even a hair on my body, Arjuna says, just like Prahlad. Now, this comparison with Prahlad is also very interesting here. Arjuna is feeling so much dependence on Krishna in this series of verses. Although big achievements he has achieved, big things he has attained in his life, but in every achievement he's seeing Krishna as the doer. In Prahlad's case, when Prahlad was attacked by Hiranyakashipu's so many plans, Prahlad did not carry any weapon, nor did Prahlad fight. He was just remembering Narayan, and very mystically he was getting saved. So when you are just remembering Krishna like this, and you are not taking any endeavor, you're not fighting back, you're not retaliating, you're not using any weapon. And then in such a situation, when we get saved, it's easier to see, oh, it is Krishna's mercy. Only because of Krishna, I could get saved. But Arjuna was not just sitting silently and remembering Lord Krishna. He was actually fighting. And he was not ordinary, but the best fighter, the best archer. Having used all his skills and talents, did not bring any doership in him. Although he was using all this, he was understanding this only external first. This all drama I am doing. I'm just acting. Who is actually doing is Krishna. So that's a very important lesson we need to learn from Arjuna in how he could see Krishna as the real. And Arjuna says the enemy neglected us. They did not attack me when I was feeding water to my horses. Because on the battlefield, water is a big issue. All the animals, all the soldiers, everyone feels very thirsty. And in the right moment of crisis, when water is not available, it becomes very difficult to go on. So Arjuna had got down from his chariot to get some water for his horses. And that time, no one attacked him. So Arjuna saw that was also Krishna's mercy. And then he says, how could I dare to engage Krishna as my driver? So another important lesson that we see in this series of verses is Arjuna is not giving just some generalized appreciation, but is appreciating Krishna's mercy with very specific incidences in his life. So when I was staying in the youth center, we call it as Voice. And that time Radheshyam used to train us in many small aspects in our devotional service. So when we used to appreciate some devotee, saying that, oh, Prabhuji is very humble. Especially on their birthdays, we would express appreciations. We would say, Prabhuji is very tolerant. Prabhuji is very merciful. So Radheshyam would tell us, yeah, it's good to say that devotee is very humble. It's good to say devotee is very tolerant. It's good to say devotee is very merciful. But it will be much better if you can also quote incidences where you observe this quality. That makes it that makes that quality come out very powerfully, and we also become very conscious, more conscious in seeing the greatness of the devotee or the devotee's activities. So then that trend had come where anyone would appreciate anyone. They would also try to quote some incidents. The same way, we need to value Krishna. We need to express gratitude to Krishna. We need to thank Krishna in our life. But it is much better if we can do it with specific incidences. Oh, this is a situation where I could see Krishna's mercy in my life. And this is a situation where Vaishnavas helped me in my life. Very specific incidences, situations, especially at the end of the day, if we are able to take out some time and recap the day, which all situations in my life I could see Krishna's mercy. That will be very nice. We can see many devotees do this. They express their gratitude to Krishna, but with specific incidences. Even Queen Kunti in her prayers, she says, Vishan Mahagne Purushada Darshana Asat Sabhaya Vanavas Krichyata Mride Mride Nek Maharatastato Droniyasta Chasma Hare Virakshita. She also specifically mentions many incidences. Vishan, Krishna, you saved us from the poisoned cake. Mahagni, from the fire. Purushada Darshana, the cannibals. Asat Sabhaya, you saved us from that Asat Sabha which was happening. Vanavarasa Kuchata. So at every step, she also expresses how Krishna is saved. So the whole lesson Prabhupada is driving from this series of verses is we need to see Krishna as the real doer in our life. We are not the doer. So when we do something, when we achieve some result, it's actually uh, difficult to believe that we are not the doer. But uh, if we take out some time and work upon it, it's possible to develop. Obviously, by mercy of Guru and Krishna only will that happen. So we have one very senior devotee in Pune temple. And one day when he dressed the deities, Radha, Vrindavan, Chandra, so beautifully he dressed the deities. So I went to this devotee and I was appreciating him. I said, Prabhuji, so nicely you have dressed the deities today. Deities are looking so beautiful today. And very naturally he said, oh, what did I do? My part is very small. I said, how? No, you have only dressed the whole deity. Deity is appearing so attractive because of your efforts and your devotion, your skills, your talents. I said, no. Uh, he went into a detailed discussion. He said that, you see, the deity is carved by somebody else. And so much effort has been taken to get the deity. So many devotees were involved in designing how the deity should look. So many people worked very hard to carve the deity. And the deity itself is so beautiful. The marble stone itself is carved so nicely. And then he said, so many devotees have worked hard to make this beautiful altar. And so many people have worked hard to set the lights. Some people have invented the lights. And he said, so many devotees have worked hard to get the dress made so nicely. And so many devotees have worked hard to get the jewelries. And so many devotees have done very nice dressing in the past, because of which I'm just copying them. I've just learned how they tie pagadi, how they put the peacock feather and all the details, how they put the dhoti. I've learned from them. So if I see like that, my part is very small. So all these parts have already been arranged. I have just put the dress on the deity, which I have also not made. So that was very profound for me. It was very deep, and I could see this devotee is very much able to see other devotees' contributions, and still deeper, if we go, we should also try to see Krishna's contributions like this in our life. Many years back, when I had begun chanting 16 rounds in my life, I was feeling, oh, I am chanting 16 rounds. I am doing my devotional service so nicely. Every day I attend morning program. But some days when I felt very sick, and it was so difficult to even chant one round in severe sickness. That day, I could understand actually it's all Krishna's mercy I'm able to chant 16 rounds. Otherwise, even to move one bead is actually impossible without His grace in our life. So Lord Brahma, when he's praying to Krishna for empowerment before creation, this comes in third canto, ninth chapter. Krishna, Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy. One of the prominent prayer that he does is, "Oh Lord, when I'm engaged in your devotional service throughout the day, Please bless me so that I do not get this doership mentality. I can see you as a doer in my life. And when Sarvam Bhattacharya, I don't remember whether it's Sarvam Bhattacharya or Advaita Acharya, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to their home for prasad, and he says that all these items are made by one for whom it is made. So although he has prepared all the items for serving him prasad, but it is made by one for whom it is made. So many devotees we see, they do big things, or even in the smallest of the things, they see Krishna as the doer. So the moment we take credit for the service, that very moment we actually lose all the credit of that service. So time is running out. I'll just rush through now the remaining presentation. Now, verse 18 to 26, Arjuna is feeling null and void in Krishna's absence. He's remembering how he had frank talks and smiling exchanges, and he's remembering all that, what I explained earlier. He came into the Dasya Bhav, and he was feeling that, oh, Krishna tolerated my scolding. And later on, he also expresses that I was defeated by these infidel cowards. So this is a situation when Arjuna was carrying all the queens of Krishna, and these Adivasis, the infidel cowards, they come and attack. And same Arjuna, the same Gandiva Bhav, everything was available with him, but he could not protect all these wives of Krishna. Very easily, these tribal people, they just came and kidnapped all Krishna's wives and took away. So this incident is just before Arjuna's arriving in this place, Hastinapur, where he's discussing with Yudhishthira Maharaj. So he says, I'm the same Arjuna, but now Krishna is not with me. That is the reason I got defeated. And then he expresses about how all the intoxicated yadus, they fought amongst themselves. And he sees all this as Krishna's will. I was defeated, I was disempowered, or yadus, they fought amongst themselves. All this is Krishna's will. Lord only arranged all this. So, see, when one gradually falls sick in his life, or when one is gradually becoming poor in his life, it is easier because slowly we get adjusted to the situation. We get accustomed to the changes in our life. But what if suddenly you are disempowered? That becomes very difficult to cope up with. That's what happened with Arjuna. He was suddenly disempowered, and he was not ordinary soul. He was like, it's like the champion cricketer was clean bowled by some small child who plays in gullies, or a big Bhagavad Kathakar, forgetting one of the most basic topic, forgetting one of the most basic verse from Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. So it was a very embarrassing situation, and it was very sudden. But still, Arjuna, because of his great devotion, he saw Krishna's will. He did not get affected because, oh, this is Krishna's will, and let me surrender to Krishna's will. See, no one is hero always in his life. Somehow Krishna has his plans, and heroes will keep changing. And if one has lost his focus from cultivating devotion in his life, one will get affected. So we see in Ramayana, Hanumanji was the main hero. But the next battle was there when Lord Ram appeared as Krishna, and the battle of Mahabharata was there. Hanumanji was told that you cannot be the main hero, you just be on the flag. Arjuna will be hero. And after the battle of Kurukshetra, now in this situation, we see even Arjuna is not hero. So Hanumanji could not remain hero always. Arjuna could not remain hero always. And what to say of other living entities, other people, as Prabhupada says, they are like pigs. So situations of such challenge, of such sudden change will always come. But if we learn to see Krishna's will and surrender to Krishna's will, then even in those great calamities, we will make wonderful progress in our spiritual life. And Srila Prabhupada writes a very important statement. He says, action is judged by Lord's pleasure or displeasure. Whether some action is good or not, whether it was right or wrong. The primary criteria to judge their action is whether Krishna is pleased. So Arjuna may be defeated, but if Krishna is pleased, it's all right. Those might have fought with each other, but if Krishna is ultimately pleased, then it's all right. On the other side, if some very proper activity may be there, but if Krishna is not pleased, then that action was useless. So in the next section, this is last but one section, that is 27 to 31. After seeing Krishna's will and after experiencing that I am feeling so much grief, now Arjuna focuses on Krishna's instructions and attains transcendence. So Arjuna recalls the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, which are imparted to him. And as soon as he recalls the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, the conversation that he had with Krishna, Arjuna became pacified. All the trash in his thoughts subsided. Arjuna again became Lord of his senses. He was situated in transcendence. So, just one lesson here. So we need to take shelter of Krishna Katha again and again. It's not that we have heard once and we are protected for all the time. Although Arjuna had heard Bhagavad Gita, but again he had to recall Bhagavad Gita. Because world is so dynamic with so many ups and downs. We need to keep taking shelter of Krishna Katha again and again. And because Vapu will always not be available, what will stay with us is Vani. So we see all the great devotees like Dhruva Maharaj, although he saw Vishnu, but still he expressed his desire to hear Krishna Gatha in association with devotees. And many souls we will see, Prahlad Maharaj or others also. Although they are seeing Lord himself, but they have expressed a desire that I want to hear Krishna Gatha in association with devotees again and again. So that is the only remedy. One of the bureau member, ISKCON India is actually owned by and managed by ISKCON Bureau, which contains around 18 to 20 devotees. And their life is really very hectic because so many legal issues, so many complications. They have to look after all the whatever 300, 400 centers which are there in India. And any issue in any place comes, it actually comes to them. So Bhakta Rupa Prabhu, who is one of the very senior devotee in ISKCON Bureau, Srila Prabhupada disciple, he had come to Pune. And we were asking him, Prabhuji, how do you manage? Because for us, it is so difficult to manage our own life. Or if I'm managing 3-4 people around, it's so complicated. Sometimes it becomes so messy. Handling one youth preaching center, youth outreach center is so difficult for me. How do you manage these 300, 400 centers all over India? So many issues. He just answered in one line. He says, Srimad Bhagavatam is the solace. Krishna Gatha is the solace. Since to the degree we take shelter of Krishna Gatha, to the degree we take shelter of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, to that degree we will remain undisturbed and will be able to continue our services to Guru and Krishna. And Prabhuji, how much time do we have?
Prabhuji, this is nectar flowing, so please continue. You can take how much ever time you want.
just last 2 slides, Prabhuji.
Sure, Prabhu. Sure.
This is the last slide.
Yeah.
And this verse 32 to 51, Yudhishthira Maharaj's plans for his retirement, and seeing that he is retiring, others also follow him. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, he decides to retire, and seeing that he is retiring, Kunti also engages in bhakti. Yudhishthira understands the removal of Yadu's entry of Kali. So entry of Kali is actually the Kali personified. He had met Krishna, and he had asked, when and how can I take over now? And Krishna understood that if Yadus continue, if I also continue, or if I ascend to the spiritual world in my self-same body, it will be very difficult for Kali to enter because dharma will continue to exist. So in order to destroy faith of atheistic people and also to allow adharma to come in, because many adharmic souls were waiting to take their birth and complete their active activities. So Krishna arranged this fight between the Yadus, and he also apparently got shot by the arrow of Jara, and that's how the principles, the four principles of Kali Yuga, only one principle remained, and Kali entered. Seeing that Kali is entering, Yudhishthira Maharaj understood that I should leave now. Also because Krishna is no more. So this is a very important lesson. Sometimes Pandavas may appear to be very uh, fruitive, that they are doing so many yagyas, they are fighting the battlefield. All this they did to gain a kingdom. All this they did to gain prestige. All this they did to gain opulences in their life. But that was not the purpose actually. The real purpose of whether doing any Rajasuya Yagya or fighting the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the only purpose was to please Krishna. And that is evident from this incidents. Although they were kings, they could have continued with their opulences, but the moment they got the news that Krishna is no more there, uh, they decided that we are also not supposed to continue. We also need to wind up. So that shows very clearly that they were living only for Krishna's pleasure. So Yudhishthira Maharaj doesn't just right away depart, but he completes his duties. He enthrones Parikshit and Vajra, and becoming unattached to everything, he starts for the north. And other Pandavas also follow him. Vidura also leaves his body at Prabhas, and he also returns to his original post of Yamaraj. And Draupadi and Subhadra also, they get absorbed in Krishna, and they also attain the same result as their husbands. So just 2-3 minutes we discuss about this principle of retirement. It is said that when one shows detachment untimely or doesn't show detachment timely, both will cause disturbance in family. When one shows detachment untimely, like when I wanted to join as a brahmachari, it was such a havoc in my whole family, because I come from a joint family of almost 30 members staying in one home. It was a big turmoil. So when one shows detachment untimely, that disturbs family. Or when one doesn't show detachment timely, time has come, still he's very, very attached. He's not leaving. That also actually disturbs family. Now, Pandavas, they no one had to force them to go out. No one had to preach them to leave. Uh, they actually left because of their spiritual assets, because of the strong connection with Krishna. And opposite was the case of Dhritarashtra. He could not leave because he had not acquired sufficient spiritual assets. Uh, That's why Vidura had to come and give him Sukruti, and he had to preach him. And that is only when all the hopes were taken away from his life, then he left. And Prabhupada compares this to many of the politicians who are not retiring. And they are not able to contribute, but still they are not retiring. And whether they retire or not, anyways, death will come. So when death comes, anyways, everything will go away. Why not voluntarily retire? That voluntarily retiring will be much, much more advantageous than forcefully retiring because of death. Now, it's not necessary that everyone has to leave when Krishna has left. You will see there are 3 classes of devotees. One class we can see example is Haridas Thakur. He wanted to depart before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leaves this planet. So one step ahead, that I cannot see you leaving. Before you go, I want to complete my life here. Second category we see is of Pandavas, who left as soon as Krishna departed from this planet. But we also see third category of devotees like Uddhava or Raghunath Das Goswami. So although Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed, they continued to live on this planet only for the purpose of executing mission of the Lord. So it is said, live for what they lived for. So when spiritual master leaves, it gives lot of pain. And the disciples feels as if my life has been taken away. I do not want to continue anymore in this world. But only reason he continues to live is to live for what his spiritual master lived. Only reason he continues to live is to execute or give further shape to the mission of the spiritual master. So many souls have shown this exemplary uh, step in their life. See, Parikshit Maharaj also, when he was cursed, he did not retaliate. He accepted that as the will of the Lord and retired. In fact, acharyas say that he was waiting for the time in his life where he could retire and fully engage himself in hearing the glories of God. And we see Srila Prabhupada's life also, when his business collapsed, and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was telling him that take sannyas, take sannyas. So although he was afraid, he took sannyas. He retired from his family life. So in all these examples, the principle is Krishna's pleasure. It's not necessary that we have to retire, or it's not necessary that we have to continue. We need to take the decision in our life based on what will please Krishna, doing will of the Lord. Like Priyavrat, he was renounced. He was already in the forest, but he renounced his renunciation for pleasure of Krishna. It was Krishna's will that you come back and again rule. He did that. So in the later part, Prabhupada writes that we need to fly our own plane. I'm giving example of Draupadi and Subhadra, that we all will have to, we are given opportunity to practice right now and create a right consciousness, Krishna consciousness. At the time of death, no one will be able to help you. We need to fly our own plane. And yeah. One more thing is the pure devotees of the Lord. They never think that they have done enough bhakti in their life. Like Pandavas, they had done sufficiently their duties of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But they understood one point of time that this is all endless. And they retired to again increase their bhakti. Although they are pure devotees, but pure devotees never think that they have done sufficient devotional service. They always want to intensify it more and more, more and more. And we see Srila Prabhupada also. Although he fulfilled the desire of his spiritual master of going to the West and preaching in English language, but he never stopped there. He always wanted to do more and more and more till last breath. He was trying to preach. He was trying to spread Krishna consciousness. A pure devotee never feels he has done enough, so he takes steps always in his life to intensify his bhakti. Yeah, and then the last verse, Falushruti is given that if anyone hears this narration of Pandavas retiring, then he will be blessed with bhakti for Lord Hari in his life. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveta Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Very well. Thank you so much, Vikram Gauranga Prabhu. Vikram Gauranga Prabhu ki jai. Prabhu, you have a few minutes to take some questions.
Yes, Puja, I'm available, but I'm afraid I have taken more.
No, that's okay, Prabhu. So please don't feel bad. But this class was pure nectar. You covered so many points. I'll just quickly summarize some of the things that really touched me. So you started by talking about feelings of separation, and then you talked about permutations and combinations that humans usually want in terms of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, whereas animals can survive with very basic things. You gave the example of how a dog that you had, for the entire life, it just survived with milk and chapatis. Whereas humans, if they're served the same thing, even for a certain period of time, they can start even developing symptoms of vomiting and so on. That was one thing. And the second thing that you mentioned about separation was what wind does to fire, separation does to soul. I really like that quote. And also, in relation to separation, you mentioned separation is like being under the sun, union is like being under the moon. That was also amazing. Then you went into the topic of empowerment and disempowerment. And you mentioned that Krishna can empower anyone, So Prithu Maharaj, he empowered maintenance, 4 Kumaras knowledge, Vyasadeva writing, Parshuram destruction, and so on. And then you mentioned the downfall of empowerment is that it can bring pride. And then so skills that are not needed, skills that Krishna gives may not be needed for us to go back home, back to Godhead. And that is why he disempowers some of the skills. And then you brought about an important cycle about Vaishnav Kripa, how that leads to Krishna Kripa, and how Krishna Kripa leads to Vaishnav Seva. That was also brilliant. And then I really like the analogy where you mentioned that Krishna tolerates offenses to himself on the head, but he cannot tolerate insults to his devotees, which is the feet. So we can tolerate the heat on the head, but we cannot tolerate the heat on the feet. Then I really liked another point that you mentioned, which is about gaining favor of demigod will not guarantee getting favor of Krishna. You gave the example of Ravan, which is also a brilliant point. And then another point you mentioned is that Krishna, we should always aspire to hear about Krishna in the association of devotees, like Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, and so on. And then after talking about empowerment, disempowerment, separation, you brought a nice point about retirement. So detachment, whether it happens timely or untimely, both can cause havoc. And then you mentioned about how devotees like Haridas Thakur, some of them left before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then Pandavas left as soon as Krishna left. And then you gave the example of Uddhava and Raghunath Das Goswami, who continued to live on this planet even after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left. So live for what they lived for. That is a brilliant point again. So thank you so much, Vikram Gauranga Prabhu. I mean, this was so many gems actually. So feeling really blessed, and I felt really Krishna conscious in the last 1.5 hours that you were speaking. So I'll open it up now. I have one question, but if anybody else has any questions or comments, I'll open it up. Yeah, please go ahead. Anybody? Vinay Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. As I'm so grateful that we got opportunity to hear you. Thank you so much, Gaur Kumar Prabhu. As he like Prabhuji summarized like all the important points. I mean, like I was even I will add to it that I was feeling Krishna conscious when like hearing this class. Each and every point was so important. Like you started with this hyper need that we humans have to get happiness, and like how we try all the permutations and combinations, but still get frustrated because only Krishna and Krishna Bhakti can give happiness. Then an example of feet and head about like how Krishna cannot tolerate like insults to his devotees. So many points about like retirement, timely, and those all these points coupled with your personal experiences and realizations makes it like so precious to hear and like gives us better clarity, Prabhu. And so thank you so much for each and every point. And yes, and we hope to like hear you again in future. We will love to, Prabhu. Yeah, please.
I was very afraid to speak today because all of you are very sincere devotees. I've heard a lot about many of you from Karan Prabhu in my discussions. He keeps studying about many of you, and especially about Kumar Prabhu. I have a lot of respect for him doing such amazing service. I was very afraid to speak and spoil all of your time. I tried something.
It's your kindness, Prabhu, and sadhana of so many years that we can see like whatever you speak like touches our heart. So thank you so much. Keep us in your association.
Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Gaurang Prabhu. Thank you so much. Sorry, someone else wanted to go?
No, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhu. This is amazing. I had only heard about you from Karan Prabhu a lot. And now that I'm getting to hear from you, this was amazing. I mean, I've always heard, even I was trained in Pune, and I've always heard that the main focus in the life of a brahmachari is the study of shastras. And I can see that very clearly in you. The way you unpacked each and every shloka, each and every point that Prabhupada made in the purport in such a wonderful way with so many references. That was really amazing, and so many sublime points you made. I mean, Gaur Kumar Prabhu did the best job of delineating all those. But yeah, so many points really hit me. Especially about one point that I really loved was how much advancement we have made in Krishna consciousness can be judged by how much we hanker for devotee association when we don't have it. So that was really an amazing point, because at least I have seen in my life that I complain, oh, there is no association, there is nothing to do, this and that. But then that is not really the sign of a sincere sadhaka, I guess. Also about empowerment and disempowerment, I always feel proud about doing certain small things, but then it's time and again, I face some situation where I understand that no, it's not my own effort that is bearing fruit here. This is definitely Krishna's mercy and Vaishnava's mercy that is coming to me. So, but yeah, overall a brilliant class, and I don't think you caused any havoc by taking to the renounced order of life. Yeah, definitely. You are such a boon to the whole movement of Prabhupada and all of us Vaishnavas. Definitely. I have the fortune of knowing your brother as well. Bhushan Prabhu, I forgot his initiated name. I'm sorry.
Balabhadranam.
Yeah. So
How do you
yeah.
know him, Pravi?
So I was in VIT Voice, and then he's connected to Kanai Thakur Prabhu, who
Yeah.
also used to take care of VIT. So we happened to interact and meet a couple of times. So yeah.
He's also in Pune only now, Brahmachari, Kanada Kuru's group.
Yeah, I met him last time I was in India, in Jeevdaya department. He was working at the bookstore there. Yeah, you both look very similar, and I remember as soon as I saw you, I understood that yes, you might be his brother, and I asked him. He confirmed that yes, this person is my brother.
You asked him right now?
No. This was many years ago.
Earlier.
Yeah, but
I've seen your presentations, Projay. Very, very brilliant presentations you have always given. I am one of them, but Projay's YouTube channel is a great blessing. Get to go through them, and especially your dramas are very captivating.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna and Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, this was such a wonderful class. Gaurkumar Prabhu and Jitendra Prabhu, summarized all the points. Many of them, struck with me also, which like separation, how it, it increases our love for Krishna. And empowerment was the other point that really stuck with me, that even empowerment is actually, Krishna takes it away because it's not really necessary for us to go back to Godhead. The other point that really struck me and reminded me of Radhesham Prabhu's class was about praising other devotees and praising other devotees with examples. And that is such a good, that is such an important point. And many of your points that you mentioned today, reminded me of older classes by Radhesham Prabhu, which where some of these things have come up. I felt like I felt a familiarity, Prabhu. So thank you so much for all you do and for your class. I wanted to make one more point, which Radhesham Prabhu has mentioned, and that Gaurkumar Prabhu also exemplifies, which is, whenever you meet somebody in the renounced order, instead of asking them how are they doing, or are they doing well, or something like that, you should share with them what you enjoyed in their class. So every time we hear, like for example, even today, Gaurkumar Prabhu said what he liked in your class first, and he covered the whole thing, and that is something I learned from other classes too, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Please bless me, Projay. I can continue serving properly in the right mood. That is very, very vital. Because whatever I've been speaking is, it's all mercy of devotees that we get to hear sufficiently in Brahmacharya ashram. It's easy to just note down and arrange things point wise and speak out, but most difficult thing is to apply these things in my life. Only by mercy of Vaishnavas it is possible actually to follow all these points in my own life. So seek your blessings. I can do this in my life.
So we will definitely have you again, Prabhu, time permitting for you. We love to have you again here in the Sangha. I just want to read one comment by Lekha Mataji, who's joined us from ISV. She says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, truly agree with others. I too felt more Krishna conscious after hearing from you. My biggest takeaways are how I should be wary of the talent that Krishna has given. I will also try to remember the fact that every seva that comes our way is Krishna's mercy, and I'll try to take it up to the best of my abilities. Lately, I've been slowly realizing the power of devotee association, and thank you for emphasizing on that. Absolutely amazing class, and I pray that we can all hear more from you. Yes. So one question I have, Prabhu, just 5 minutes very quickly. So this is a practical question that usually I'm questioned with. So here you gave the example, this is in relation to separation. You gave the example of Arjuna, the gopis, and so on. So in one sense, they were with Krishna, and then somehow Krishna went away from them. And then they felt the separation. But in our case, even though Paramatma is with us, to even realize that Krishna is with us or Krishna leaving from us is actually on a very theoretical basis. So in your personal example, how do you feel the separation, and how does that increase your bhakti, your ecstasy, and so on? So if you can please elaborate, that will help us from a practical perspective.
So if I understand rightly, your question is, how do we experience Krishna's
separation
in our life?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, because we don't even understand that Krishna is with us in one sense, because as Paramatma, he's there, but we don't even understand that. It's all theoretical for most of us. So how do we understand Krishna's separation?
So as per when I got to study this chapter more deeply, what I could understand in this connection is, yeah, Krishna is there with us, but due to ignorance, because of the covering of avidya, we hardly notice his presence in our life, and it doesn't matter whether he's there, he's not there. Like we are just blunt with that and going ahead with our own life. But this process of hearing and chanting Krishna's glories, to the degree that has purified our heart, to that degree we will be able to feel that Krishna is actually missing in my life. So as we see, I was hearing one nice seminar by his question that how do we know I am chanting Shuddhanam? And he said that anyone who is chanting Shuddhanam will never understand that he is chanting Shuddhanam. Because when you're chanting, is more and more pure. When you chant Shuddhanam, it is accompanied by such humility and so much looking inwards into one's own faults. Although there are very hardly any faults there, but he's so much seeing Krishna's greatness, and in front of Krishna's greatness, he sees himself so insignificant that he feels, I'm not able to chant properly. So even ignorant person or person who is a namaparad, he also feels I'm not chanting properly. And a Shuddhanam person also will feel the same thing that I'm not chanting Shuddhanam. But he is on Shuddhanam because he's constantly engaged in chanting of the holy names. So his symptoms we need to see to understand that he has reached that state. Same way, I see that to the degree we want to contact Krishna, to the degree we want to contact him through his holy name, his katha, his seva, to that degree we can understand, are we really going closer to feeling separation from Krishna? So in the 10th canto, this very beautiful shloka comes, iti nanda dayo gopa Krishna rama katamudha kurvanto ramamanascha na bhaved namindam bhava vedana. So Nanda Maharaj and all the cowherd men, they were experiencing, although there were a lot of difficulties in their life, but real joy they would experience when they would do Krishna Katha. Although Krishna and Balram were present, but they were doing Krishna Katha and relieving their miseries and getting rid of their pain. So my understanding is that to the degree we will hear and chant and attract the mercy of Acharya in our life, to that degree we will get purified. To the degree one becomes pure, he will feel separation from Krishna. And symptom is he will engage, he will want to relieve his pain of separation by engaging in more and more Krishna consciousness. He will want to chant constantly, he will want to hear constantly, he will want to serve constantly. Because that is the only relieving factor when he is away from Krishna. As we see, Arjuna also remembered Bhagavad Gita when he was feeling great separation from Krishna. So the process and the means and the ends are same. The means is Krishna Katha, and ends will also be doing more and more Krishna Katha. Does it answer your question? I don't know.
Brilliant, Prabhuji. Brilliant. Wonderful answer. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So thank you all so much for joining. I know it's what is it, 10:30 in New York, I think. Yeah,
10:37. But it's like Prabhuji's class has brought me more into Sattva Gun rather than ignorance, although it's 10:37 p.m. Yeah, not exaggerating in any way, truly. So
thank you again, Vikram Gauranga Prabhu. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Grace Vikram Gauranga Prabhu ki jai. Thank you.